going too quickly. Hold on a minute. It's setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Hold on. Still coming. Whenever you're ready, then.
Good. Well, good evening. I hereby call to order the Ithaca Landmarks Preservation Commission meeting for January 21st, 2025. This meeting is being held in Common Council Chambers, 3rd floor, City Hall, 108 East Green Street in Ithaca, and virtually using video conferencing technology. Virtual participation in public meetings is authorized by Part WW of Chapter 56 of the Laws of 2022 of New York State and Local Law 2022-05. The Commission operates under the provisions of the Ithaca City Charter, Ithaca Landmarks Ordinance, and the Commission's own rules and procedures. The Commission comprises of 7 members nominated by the mayor and approved by Common Council. Commission members present tonight are, can we introduce ourselves that way? Yeah. Commission members present tonight are, and we'll start with Caitlin.
Out of breath. Caitlin Olson, member. Susan Stein, member.
Bobby Smith, member. David Kramer, vice chair.
Ed Finnegan, chair.
Stephen Gibeon, member.
Brian McCracken, Historic Preservation and Neighborhood Planner.
Before we begin tonight's meeting, please be advised of the following. Read the plan. So we need this tonight?
That's my
Not tonight. No. Okay. The commission will consider the following: certificate of appropriateness application for material change and alteration at this meeting tonight. We have 115 The Knoll, Cornell Heights Historic District proposal to demolish and reconstruct the partially enclosed west porch with changes in design of the wall enclosures and the construction of a rooftop terrace and staircase. This application is available for public view on the table at the back of the room. Anybody present? No. As well as on the city website. All interested parties will be given an opportunity at the hearings to address the commission concerning this application. So,
All right.
we will begin with this application. Again, it's 115 The Knoll, Cornell Heights Historic District, proposal to demolish and reconstruct the partially enclosed west porch with changes in design, wall enclosures, and creation of a rooftop terrace and staircase.
Right, and we have Rob Marash and Noah Demarest from Stream Collaborative here this evening to present the project.
Okay.
Bob and Noah, when you're ready, please start your cameras and unmute yourself to present the project.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
So I'm going to kick things off here, but then I'm going to let Rob kind of talk through the particulars of the design. We are here proposing a number of different things related to interior improvements as well as exterior improvements to this building. We have sort of recently gotten some pricing information on certain aspects of this project, so we're sort of trying to digest all of that and help the client think through the exact scope of this project. So I just want to kind of give fair warning that there may be a possibility that some aspects of this project may not make the cut, if you will. But having said that, I think I'll let Rob kind of talk through the whole scope of it, and then we can kind of revisit and I can touch base on kind of some of the priorities for the client and so forth. And I say that because we may want to look at this holistically and have this project reviewed as is. But there's also a chance that we may want to kind of reduce the scope a little bit and kind of zero in on exactly what the priorities are. But in any case, we'd love to hear feedback on the entire project. So with that, I'll let Rob kind of talk through. And I don't know, Rob, do you want to share your screen or do you want me to share my screen? You're muted.
Okay. Yeah, I can share my screen here.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. It is not letting me share. Oh, I have to pick one. Okay. There we go. All right. Can you all see this?
We saw it for a second and then it disappeared.
Oh my God. Well, no, why don't you try sharing your screen?
Sure.
It's not cooperating. I've had tech problems today.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is the existing floor plan. I don't know if you want to
Right.
start there, Rob.
Right. Yeah. So you know, basically the area in question. So this is the front of the building, which faces the knoll, and this is the back, which faces an amazing view of the lake. And this portion here was. Oh, I just realized I'm moving my mouse and you can't see my mouse.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Anyway,
I'll try to follow along.
so the dining room extension and the porch were originally a very beautiful exposed porch. It was all outdoors. And at some point, I think after it became a frat house, that dining room extension was enclosed. And Noah, do you happen to have the photos pulled up?
I do. See if I can find one.
Because it really helps to. Oh, gosh. They're in the narrative,
Oh, yeah. I've got
the
that.
ones that are relevant.
Yeah.
Make it easier.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, start with that first. There we go. So this is the porch as it exists now. And you can see all these wonderful column details and exposed timbers and everything, as well as the stone base. That was all part of the original porch. But then these horrible double hung windows and this texture 111 type siding that's been infilled in between the original columns was the stuff that was added later. It was very insensitively done. In fact, you can see the columns on the inside as well. And, you know, there are other technical issues that these are older windows and the insulation wasn't done properly, et cetera, et cetera. Now, over the years, Noah, if you can go down to the next page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to show some of the rot conditions that we have. There's a close-up. There we go. Noah, if you can zoom in on that. So you can see this is typical of what's been happening with this porch, and it's over 100 years old. The beams have been exposed to the weather on the top, and they were made of several laminations. They're not solid timbers. So they've absorbed water. You can see some mushrooms growing out of them. And if you note those caps on the ends of all of the rafters, those are to cover the rotted ends. You can also see underneath one of the beams where it's actually sinking into the timber below it. There's right near there, the rafter where it's checked and there's kind of a hole. There's moisture getting in there, and this is kind of typical of all of the rafters. So, several builders have said reconstruct the whole thing. So what we'd like to do is tear it all down and rebuild it from the top of the stone upward, because the stone's in good shape. It just needs to be repointed. And Noah, maybe you can go back to a view of the main, the previous page. Yeah, so everything from the stone up would have to be removed. And then we wanted to reconstruct the porch in its entirety, but be more sensitive about the enclosure portion of it, where the dining room basically extends out onto that porch. So now, Noah, why don't you switch back to the plans? Because I'd like to show the elevation there. So what we're proposing is to, and maybe you want to zoom in on that a little bit. So we're proposing to rebuild all of the wooden portions, the historic portions, but then behind it, throw in some Marvin Modern Series glass, which is very minimal frames. just wide open glass, no screens or anything like that, so that we can maximize the feeling of this being an actual open air porch. And the client also was interested in developing a roof terrace up above. Originally, this porch, oh, no, that's good. You can see the kind of idea that we're looking at here, which was done at the Argos, where the historic porch was there, and then to enclose it, the glass was set behind all of the historic elements. So it's very clear what's historic and what's not. And what we're adding is extremely minimal, so as not to intrude on the original historic fabric the way that the insensitive enclosure did in the past. Now, the client was very interested in developing a roof terrace on top of this, and there is actually a door there from the second floor stair hall. So originally, there was access out onto this porch. Unfortunately, the original railing was about 22 inches high, which of course does not meet code. We have to be 42 inches high for this building type. So that meant that in order to do this, we would have to either build something 42 inches high in keeping with the original design, or we would have to replicate the lower railing and do something kind of clumsy on top of it. Usually that involves pipe railings or something set on top of the original wooden detailing. And, we tried that and it just looked terrible. It looked clunky. So then we got the idea to just continue using the glass up above, because we really have no obligation to reconstruct all of that original railing. So the thought was, make it all disappear, let the porch be the porch, but still allow a code compliant railing. So that is all glass. And then the client also asked for a stairway to get down into the yard. Now, this was a rather difficult piece to consider, because it's a large kind of sculptural element. And Noah, if you can zoom in on that, it'd be great. So what we're proposing here is a steel structure, probably painted black or brown or something like that, with all glass railings, so that it appears more like a sculpture that is very separate from the design of the house. And again, so that you can see clearly what's modern and what's original. So, that's kind of the design in a nutshell. And, I'll kind of let Noah talk about the other considerations that have kind of come up today.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, the only evidence of that existing or pre-existing railing is this little piece, this little pilaster that's against the house. And I
Yeah.
think Rob, you said that's like 22 inches tall, so it's not even
Yeah.
close to being code compliant. So, one thought would be to leave that because that's there, but to sort of tie in the glass railing, into that point, and not even attempt to recreate that former balustrade that
Right.
was there.
We also don't know what it looked like.
Right.
I was thinking of taking cues from the balustrade inside the house, which is really wonderful and would look great out here. But unless somebody can find a photo of this before that balustrade was removed, we just don't know what it looks like.
Yeah.
So we'd be guessing either way.
So then just to touch bit. Well, go ahead.
Is there only one half newel, or is there two of them?
I believe there's only one. I did not see one on the other side, at least from the ground.
Yeah, it's sort of a hard vantage point to see, actually, because the grade
Right.
drops off. So.
Right. And at the time we were doing the field survey, the floors upstairs had just been polyurethaned, so we couldn't actually go up there.
So just to take a step back and kind of touch base on the scope, the priority for the client has always been, I'll go to the plan view here. It really has always been about expanding the dining room and fixing these issues with the porch itself. So that's kind of the priority, and that's the thing we'd love to get the most feedback on tonight. The concept of the roof terrace and in particular the staircase are, as you can imagine, very pricey kind of additions to this overall concept. So we would love to hear feedback on that, whether or not there's appetite to see something like that. But to be really honest, those are likely things that wouldn't necessarily happen as part of this project, or at least maybe not initially. Maybe it's something that gets phased in at a later date. There are also some of these interior improvements, including this accessible restroom and stuff, that we're not sure whether those are going to make it in the scope or not. So the real priority, though, is to fix the porch. That's kind of what we're primarily here for tonight. But with that, I think we'll just leave it and open it up for any questions or comments.
The point of the staircase, the exterior staircase, because there's not a public accessible route to that door upstairs, does it go through a private room or something?
Yeah, no, there's access directly off of the foyer. You know, the staircase goes up and there's kind of a central hallway and direct access to that terrace. The thought would be just for convenience to create a connection, an outdoor connection. So it's not a requirement. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but it's not a code requirement because the terrace is essentially
Right.
just an accessory used to the residential.
Right.
use.
And it's
It's
only
not
for the
very large.
residents. Yeah, they're not going to have big parties up there or anything, but they wanted to be able to sit out there and read and that sort of thing and be able to go down into the yard if they wanted to without having to come back into the house and go down the stairs and then come out the back door.
Yeah. So it's very much an optional thing.
Yeah.
Are these new columns going to duplicate what's there?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that very well.
You're going to take everything down to the stone and rebuild. What will the new columns look like? Are they going to duplicate the historic?
Yeah, the columns, the beams, the rafter tails, the extensions, every part of that would be recreated, would be documented and recreated exactly. And
Right.
And I think it's important to note, and this is very similar to the Argos treatment, where the new wall that we're introducing, this glass wall, is set in about 7 inches from the existing to create that kind of separation. So we're not even creating, I mean, we're really recreating the columns, and we're not even touching necessarily the new to the old. It's really intentionally separated.
Will the columns and other parts be solid timber or built up as box sections?
You know, I think they would be laminated in the same way. I think we would, you know, I'm not exactly what species and how that would be done, but I think it would make sense in my mind that we would actually recreate them as similar to the way they were. The only difference is we would do a much better job with flashing caps on the top and doing things to protect the wood. I mean, I don't think that they failed early on in their life. I think they failed just over time, just with a lack of attention to some of the
Yeah, I'm
detail.
not convinced that the laminated sections are the original. I think that might be some later repairs that were done by built up. I think the originals are solid timber.
That was my sense.
It's possible, certainly possible.
And I couldn't see any miter joints on the tapered columns. I couldn't see any miter joints at the corners or laps. So.
Now, what's the story with the open porch again? Was it part of the original structure, or was it an addition built at some point?
This particular porch, we believe, was part of the original structure.
Yeah.
In fact, this was considered the main entrance because you got here by the trolley. I think these were all owned by the Treemans, so the trolley ran behind the house down the hill. So you really kind of came in this entrance as opposed to the other side, because this entrance is actually more symmetrical and just clearly much nicer than the one on the other side.
We would certainly do some investigation on these beams to see if there are any that are timber. It wasn't exactly evident to us. So it's quite possible that it was a repair at some point too. But I wouldn't be surprised if the method of laminating wood sort of maybe started around this era. So I'm not sure, I'm not convinced necessarily that it wasn't originally laminated. Perhaps Brian has input on that, or we could do some more research for sure.
Yeah, I have actually seen laminated brackets before on older buildings, like from around anywhere from 1890 on. You know, when they needed to be really super thick, they would laminate several layers, but those were usually protected under the eaves. And if we did
I'm
do
also kind of
lamination, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I'm also just looking at the kind of scroll work on the ends here, and you know how much easier that would have been to do as a lamination even back then. You know, to cut those individually instead of you know, cutting the timber like that. So you know, again, I don't know for sure, but it might require some more research.
Would you mind speaking to the structural integrity of the columns? I mean, I can appreciate that the rafter beams being exposed to the elements the way they are obviously at a higher risk. But can you talk about the structural integrity of the columns themselves?
Rob, do you have any feedback from the builder?
Well, if you want to zoom in on the bottoms of the column, that's where they're really, you know, absorbing moisture that sits on top of the stone, and of course, snow sits on top of the stone. And you can see some checking in that first column. But you know, if we start taking this thing apart and find that some columns are worth keeping, then obviously we'd keep them, because these things, to make these out of solid timber is going to be outrageously expensive. So anything we can save, we would definitely want to save, just from an economic standpoint. But like, so at the bottom, it may be that trim that's rotting out, but it might be that above that trim, the columns could be in good shape. We don't know, or they could be filled with bugs and rot. We won't know until we take it apart.
Yeah. In any case, I mean, the desire, like Rob said, would be we would keep what we can. We could even, you know, if we needed to remove like the bottom inch or two of these and repair that, and then redo the base, you know, we can certainly do that as well.
Right.
And then anything that needs to be replaced completely, I think the idea is to replace it in kind. So if it's timber, we'll replace it as timber.
Right.
Okay, thank you. And then could you talk, unless another member of the commission wants to stay on this topic, I was hoping we could talk about the windows, the current window recommendation. Is that what you're calling them? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Marvin, you're talking about the new windows?
Yes.
The proposed new windows? Yeah, it's a Marvin,
it's the modern series.
Modern series, which is really just means it has a very low profile frame, but they're a clad wood window, aluminum clad wood window.
No, actually, no, they're all fiberglass. They're fiberglass.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but they have
the modern
yeah,
is all fiber.
Right. They cost as much as the Ultimates, but they're all fiberglass. The claim to fame is that they have very narrow mullions, which kind of replicate storefront, but storefront is even more expensive and probably very inappropriate here. So it's a good way to get a minimal glass or a minimal frame, you know, without going to the storefront option.
Right. And just to point out, it's a little bit different. I mean, we're using the Argos here as a precedent, but we're not exactly doing what it was done here. This is definitely more of a commercial, very minimal glass to glass connection there.
Yeah. Those mullions might be 2 inches or so.
Yeah, so it's similar to this, but you would see a narrow line between the glass.
So would you mind
a little bit thicker than this? Sorry.
Do you mind going back to the existing photo? Because I was trying to understand a little bit more how they would interact with, are those engaged columns or are those freestanding columns that were enclosed?
They were all originally freestanding.
Okay.
And then you can see where that horrible bay window is. Between them, they actually just filled in with wall and put up this vertical siding, which I think was unfortunate. But we'd like to be able to see those as freestanding columns again, which is why we wanted to take the whole fenestration and pull it back behind the columns. And the 7 inches was a reasonable amount of space to be able to keep the backsides painted and you know, to give them air and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so these columns on the corner, this next one, they would all look like this one that's fully exposed.
Yeah.
In fact, they do. They exist as far as we can tell.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Are you proposing that the glass wall extend up behind the porch header to the ceiling? Or how would that be detailed? It looks like,
We have to look at the insulation situation because we only have a certain historic depth to work with. So we might have to drop down a little, like midway below the header in order to get the proper amount of insulation in there. But the intention was it'll go up as high as possible behind the header. And it would not engage the header.
but the bottom will end at the level of the top of the stone.
Yes, it would.
Bottom of the
And
glass.
then underneath that on the inside would be an insulated wall so that we can comply with the energy code as much as possible.
That roof looks fairly sloped. Is it the intention to keep that slope or to build on top of, like, keep that slope and build a flat platform on top of it for the deck?
The intention there was to do a membrane and keep the slope exactly the way it is, but then use a deck on pedestals to put on top of that. So in theory, it could all just be removed one day. You know, it's not good. It's going to sit on top of the roof membrane and not be engaged on the roof. And then they would put either wood or stone pavers in between each of these pedestals and then mount the railing on top of that.
So is reconstructing the porch in kind, is it gonna have the structural integrity to support that kind of weight?
Yes, it will. The timbers are more than sufficient, and so are the columns. It would be fine. In fact, the weight, the roof weight of snow and the roof weight of people during the summer is pretty much the same. It's 55 pounds a square foot. That's what the code requirement is, and I think that structure will well exceed that.
Yeah, and it was designed as a roof deck at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
So the reason I asked earlier about whether there were two applied newel posts upstairs, I imagine centered on that door window combination would be, my question would be, would it, maybe the upper deck was only over the part that has the door below and not over the dining section that's shallower. So that's,
Yeah, that's certainly possible. It could have been
Right.
something.
Right, it is possible. Yeah.
did you consider just having that be the upper railing and not putting a railing all the way across the dining room section?
Mhm.
It's just for a few people to read. It's like.
Yeah,
14
that maybe, and to be honest, you know, with the kind of reduction in the scope here, if we were to eliminate the stair, eliminate the part over the dining and just did a more, you know, assuming that this was more appropriate to what once was there, that might be a good reduction in scope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we need to get up there and maybe examine the stucco because there, even if that pilaster isn't there, there might be some evidence that it was there, or maybe at the other end. So we'll have to do some digging in that, assuming this stays in the scope at all.
Yeah, I was gonna throw out there that really because this operates as such a principal facade,
Mm-hmm.
the staircase is a real hard sell for me. I think it'll, and it's not because it's not a criticism of the design per se in the sense that it does distinguish itself and all, you know, from the original. But it's, you know, I was just doing a rough calculation. To me, it looks like it's gotta be at least 10 feet wide.
10'4".
10'4", okay, I was pretty close. And I mean, that's a primary facade smack next to the you know, the main, you know, what functions visually as a main entrance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I could possibly, I could see getting on board for the terrace itself. It was designed in a way to really recede if it wasn't in use kind of thing. But the staircase itself, it just functionally does not work. I don't think it works on the facade. So that's.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
I also feel the same way.
Yeah,
And I don't know who of us went over and actually looked at the
site. I mean, it's really was not a nice day to do that, but just looking over the structure itself, it's really beat. I mean, that wood is as rotten as anything I'd ever seen. And it's just parts of it just filled in with Bondo and painted over. I mean, it's bad. So I could definitely support replacing it in kind. And I'm with you, Caitlin. I mean, I could support the terrace, but I really don't like the stairs.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, that just glares out. If you go to the site and look at the facade, and it's a beautiful building, and then to try to visualize that stair going up there, it just kind of destroys the general balance of the building.
It's a machine in the garden, but I'm not sure we need a machine in that garden.
Other than the staircase, I think for the most part, it sounds like a really nice plan.
I like the windows. I think that's an elegant solution.
I think it was an excellent idea to give the Argos example, because that's something we see, and it actually works very well there. And I could see, doing something similar here would actually set the building off in a positive way compared to what we have there now.
I'd like to see those, if there is an upper deck, I'd like to see it reduced in size to just centered on the two doorways and not extended all the way across the dining room.
That proposed glass railing is really just glass. There's no rail to cap it off. It's just-
There is a rail cap to hold the glass sections together, and there's also a base channel that's about 4 inches high that gets screwed onto the deck.
Yeah.
So
this
so
kinda
those are
gives you
just
that profile.
right there. They're purely
It's a
horizontal
four-inch.
lines. There's not a lot of verticals.
Yeah, the gaps between are just glass butted, a small gap between each piece of glass.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about, I mean, I tend to agree. I think if we're going to reduce the scope, this would be the logical thing to do. And, whether it's even, and sorry, I drew these too tall, those existing newels or pilasters are, only 22 inches tall. So,
Mhm.
and it may be worth either repairing or keeping them in some way as a remnant, and then sort of tying the glass, wrapping them in the glass. Or butting the glass up to them, perhaps.
Right. I mean, the glass could also just hit the building outboard of it. In
Right.
fact, the glass doesn't even have to hit the building. There would probably be a 2 or 3 inch gap there, just to allow the integrity of the stucco to run through.
Mm-hmm.
How does the water make its way out of this assembly?
So the pavers that are on top of the pedestals have gaps between them. So the deck is perfectly level, but the roof surface underneath is sloped. So the water goes through the deck and just runs off the roof the way it does now.
Yeah, so the glass is not acting as a dam. It's actually
Right.
free draining through the deck itself.
Yeah.
Is there an existing built-in gutter? I didn't see any gutters.
No, there.
So,
Noah, check out the pictures. I know there's downspouts and everything on there. I'm not sure what kind of gutter exactly they have.
Yeah, this
Oh,
was,
actually, yeah, there are no gutters.
well, but like Steve is
There's
saying, there should be
downspouts.
some sort of internal drain or something, because there is
There might
a
be
gutter.
something. There might be like roof drains up at the edge or something. Again, we
Well-
have to get up on the roof to verify some of that.
Well, you can see it here. It's almost like the water is pitching to the edge of the roof and is being intercepted before it drips off into this downspout. And that happens again here. So it is some sort of kind of concealed gutter.
It's something I have never seen before.
Yeah.
So is there, I mean, especially if the commission were inclined to accept the staircase, I could appreciate wanting to tie the terrace into the ultra-modern aesthetic of that staircase. But seeing as how, doesn't sound like there's a lot of support for that ultra-modern staircase, it seems to me that the ultra-modern element of the terrace itself doesn't quite fit with the property, and I wonder if it could be detailed. If it is to come back, I think it might be better to detail it in a wood that more integrates with the existing architecture. Because I think it'll read strangely to make that ultra-modern component when it doesn't have anything else connected to it. So, and I don't know how other commissioner members feel, but if there is a terrace element, I think it might be better to just, simple, but in more keeping of the materiality of the existing building rather than going to.
How do you feel about us extending it to be 42 inches so that it complies with the code?
I mean, I would personally be fine with that, because I don't think that engaged pilaster or balustrade or whatever we're calling it, the one that remains, that's not heavily visible from the ground. And so I don't think, I think you could tie into it in a way that's sensitive. So I don't think that alone should be the detraction, because I think visually it's much more connected to the rest of the materiality of the porch rather than that one specific element. And I think it's acceptable to recognize that you need to, if you're going to put it up, it needs to comply with standards and not just be an aesthetic component, right? So I think that I would trust in your architectural design skills, which far exceed mine, to find a way to do that. But I think materiality wise, it would be more in keeping, because it would become at that point a much smaller element on the building. So using existing types of materials, I think it could effectively just blend in. But you could do it with the glass also. I think it could be integrated in a way that you still have the glass, like the glass, almost the glass curtain effect, but detailed with wood as opposed to the metal. And that actually might tie nicely in with how you're approaching the windows below. If there's a way to do that.
So I was going to suggest something like that, because if you look at the adjacent house, we've got this much smaller lower railing detail, which to my eye fits much better for this situation. And if you were to imagine that just stretched up to 42 inches, then it becomes this really dominant kind of railing. And I'm kind of just thinking through this, but I'm wondering if there is something that's more in line with this, where it is kind of maybe at that 22-inch height out of wood, but then we do extend it with glass just to get to that 42-inch code compliance. And maybe that glass is sitting inboard of this detail or something like that. Because like Rob mentioned earlier, we do see this a lot where people will take, like a metal pipe railing that's sort of extended on top. And that can work if you're at like a 36-inch railing and you're just adding one more pipe to get to 42. But to go from 22 to 42 it's a big jump, right?
Yeah, and it ends up being a 50-50 split, which you just never want to do. If it's 75-25 or 60-40, yeah.
Right. I was going to say you could see 50-50 if 50 of it's glass, though.
Yeah. We could also set the glass into the cap rail of the wood so that there is no metal piece underneath. There's a bunch of different ways to detail it that I could think of here.
In general, I think it's a great comment, and I agree. Like, if we're going to do this, if we end up doing that part, that should be more integrated with wood materials, whether it's with glass or other metal elements. But it feels appropriate to not be so glassy on that terrace.
The upper porch is too conjectural at this point to be able to approve anything, but we probably could approve the reconstruction of the porch itself and the window treatment as described. I mean, I'd be fine with that.
I want to make one comment before we leave the upper deck, though. I thought I saw blocking going, so there are two posts at each corner of that open porch. And I thought I saw blocking above each post going through the roof assembly. And I'm conjecturalizing or something that those were the original railing posts. And there might have been two at each corner.
Yeah, and that could be a great detail.
Yeah, I mean, that is very likely that they would be directly over the columns. That's the logic.
Chunks of wood going above there through the rafters. So
Mhm.
that would mean that there would be an applied half newel
Mhm.
at the wall, and then two railing posts at each corner, which would look nice with what's going on below it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be a great detail. And it's hard to see here, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can actually see a remnant of the rail profile, right? It hits
Yes.
it
Yes.
hits right into the top. So we do have some evidence of that rail, and it would make sense to me that we would replicate that and extrude that. And then the question is just how do we get code compliant from there?
Right.
And if you're adding pedestals and stone and stuff, the floor is going up.
Yeah.
Even.
So this evening, should we be opening to the public?
If you plan on voting on the resolution this evening, just approving the reconstruction portion of the project, we should have a public hearing. If the request is that they return with more information on the rooftop terrace and the detailing, then I would recommend holding off on the public hearing until they return for that
Okay.
information.
Are we ready to approve at least part of this proposal?
Well, I'm fine doing that. Is it useful to you for us to approve the rest of it or this part of it? Or do you need the whole thing? I mean, if we're not.
It would be useful to just do the part because that does keep us going with the detailing and pricing exercise for that piece. And we have no problem coming back if we decide if we want to add the roof terrace, we would come back for that for sure.
Could I have a motion to open to public discussion? Susan? We have a second. Avi? So, do we have anybody who has?
So there are no members of the public here this evening to address the commission on this project, and no members of the public submitted comments in advance.
Okay.
I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Susan, thank you. All right, do we have any other comments, concerns? So at this point, we would be approving the initial removal of the wooden areas of the porch, the reconstruction of that, the windows that are being proposed. Anything else? I think that's where we would be. Is how is the entrance area going to be changed in this? Is it basically going to be what we see today?
Yes, it's just going to be an open porch as you see today.
Okay.
Question before we proceed with reading the resolution, are you withdrawing your proposal to add the rooftop terrace and build the staircase, or is the commission denying the proposal? Because they're two very different things, but because they're lumped into the same application, we have to address both of them when reading.
I mean, I'm open to whatever's easiest, but I do think it is more of a withdrawing the proposal as designed, and we'll come back with a revision, or we may not come back with a revision, but if we do, we would come back with a different proposal.
So the person that reads the resolution, just know that I will be adding a whereas noting the withdrawal of the proposal to build the rooftop terrace and the staircase.
So I'm happy to read it. My other question was, they indicated that if something is still in functional use, but they get into it and discover that it's still functioning appropriately, then they will keep rather than replace. Can we embed that acknowledgement in here? Because you know, this, because there is language, it's standard number 6 is currently included. And so I'd like to call that out, acknowledging that will happen.
Okay.
And I'm not sure where, where that's best
I
served.
think when we talk about standard number 6, we can, actually, we should add it as a condition. But, you know, something like, although the deterioration has been documented photographically, the applicant should make every effort to preserve as much of the original historic fabric as possible during deconstruction and rebuilding.
And I think it would be great to actually have pictorial evidence of that, because some of these things, you know, you're making, and understandably, you're making assessments based on what's visually present. And you may find as you get into those columns that it really is only the bottom couple inches, and it can, you know, that part can be replaced, but the rest is intact. But if it does need to all be replaced, it'd be great to have that, a couple photographs of that, just to know that it's, because you won't know until you're in there.
Yeah. You could also add a condition where staff reviews the materials before they're disposed, you know, something
Sure.
like during the deconstruction of the porch, staff reviews the materials.
Okay, so Ryan, can you help? I do not remember from month to month how much I have to, what
I would start with the resolve.
Okay, I would note the applicant has provided sufficient information. Resolved. Can we really skip all the way there? Because I think there's some decisions to be made before that with the principles.
Read the whole thing.
Yeah, if you go to the top of page 2.
Oh, that resolved. Ah, sorry. I went to the next results. Like, wow, I really didn't want. Okay, resolved that the ILPC has made the following findings of fact concerning the property in the proposal. As identified in the City of Ithaca's Cornell Heights Historic District Summary Statement, the period of significance for the area now known as the Cornell Heights Historic District is 1898 to 1937. As indicated in the New York State Building Structure Inventory Form, the Tudor Revival style residence at 115 The Knoll was designed by the local architect firm of Gibbon Waltz and constructed between 1908 and 1909. Built as a single-family home for Eugene E. Haskell, former dean of the College of Civil Engineering at Cornell University, the house was later occupied by the Alpha Omicron Pi and Delta Phi Epsilon sororities. Constructed within the period of significance of the Cornell Heights Historic District and possessing a high level of integrity, the property is a contributing element of the Cornell Heights Historic District. In consideration of this and all of approvals for proposals for alterations, new construction, or demolition in historic districts, the ILPC must determine that proposed exterior work will not have a substantial adverse effect on the aesthetic, historical, or architectural significance and value of either the landmark, or if the improvement is within a district, of the neighboring improvements in such district. In considering architectural and cultural value, the commission shall consider whether the proposed change is consistent with the historic value and spirit of the architectural style of the landmark or district in accordance with section 228-6 of the municipal code. In making this determination, the commission is guided by the principles set forth in section 228-6B of the municipal code, as further elaborated in section 228-6C, and by the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, and in this case, specifically the following principles and standards. Principle number 2, the historic features of a property located within and contributing to the significance of an historic district shall be altered as little as possible, and any alterations made shall be compatible with both the historic character of the individual property and the character of the district as a whole. Principle number 3, new construction located within a historic district shall be compatible with the historic character of the district within which it is located. Standard number 2, the historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. The removal of distinctive materials or alterations of features and spaces that characterize the property will be avoided. Standard number 6, deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. When the severity of deterioration requires a replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, materials. Replacement of missing features shall be substantiated by documentary, physical, or pictorial evidence. Standard number 9, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. Standard number 10, New additions or adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that, if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment will be unimpaired. With respect to principle number 2, standard number 2, and standard number 9, the demolition and reconstruction of the partially enclosed west porch and
Eliminate the
Yep.
construction.
will remove distinctive materials, but will not alter features and spaces that characterize the property. With respect to principle number 2 and standard number 9, as documented, I guess, or which one?
So I would say as shown in the submitted photographs, graphs and observed by the commission, by some commission.
The severity of the deterioration of the of the,
Or just wooden elements.
yeah. Requires its replacement. I think we should also include. Let's see, in the next section. No, we'll put it in the next section. The proposed new work will match the old in design, color, texture, material, and other visual qualities. And I don't think there's any missing features that we need to worry about right now.
Not right now. Potentially with the next application for the rooftop terrace, but not this.
So also with respect to principle number 2, principle number 3, and standard number 9, the proposed rooftop terrace. Sorry, nope, no, they're not. The proposed. So I don't think we need
I'd say windows.
windows. Are compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features of the property and its environment. I'd like to note that window, the bay window is not original to the design and reflects a enclosure. You know, I would imagine it's outside the period of significance for the district, because the period of significance for the district is 37.
It's a pretty old window after that low window,
You think so?
and it matches a lot of this same, it matches a lot of the original windows on the house, which has blind stops and
Interesting.
it's a pretty old window.
I wonder if they pulled it out of someplace else. Or if it wasn't a new window when they put it in.
They may have removed the wall when they expanded the dining area and just pushed those.
It does match the other windows.
And yet, but it's obviously not. The enclosure is not original.
So in the resolution, I'll note that the enclosure is not original, not necessarily the historic, the fabric that is there. Some of it could have been salvaged from the house. Reused.
Yeah, if you look at the floor plan, it's the opening between the dining room and the dining extension is just about that same size.
Yeah, they might have just, to Brian's point, they might have just pushed it out. I mean, it's a great reuse material.
That's probably what it was, is it used to be a layer back.
Yeah. Okay, with respect to standard number, never mind, we're gonna remove that one.
Also the windows can be removed.
Okay, the windows, with respect to, standard number 10, the windows can be removed in the future without impairment of the essential form and integrity of the historic property and environment. Resolved that based on the findings set forth above, the proposal will not have substantial adverse effect on the aesthetic, historical, or architectural significance of the Cornell Heights Historic District as set forth in section 228.6, and be it further resolved that the Ethical Landmark Preservation Commission determines that the proposal meets criteria for approval under section 228-6 of the municipal code. Was there anything else that needed to be added? Did you already say where you're including the removal of the retraction of the porch part?
Yep, I'll add it in the whereas, and then
Okay,
a condition of approval is the retention of as much of the wooden elements in the porch as possible. For reuse and
I think staff approval for the actual wood that's used.
Yeah.
The materiality for the wooden features. And we didn't say anything about the repair of the stone, that's gonna fall outside, that's gonna fall under your purview.
Yeah, if it's
The
a
mason
repairing
repair?
kind for repointing, then that's something that I agree with. So,
Okay, so those are the conditions. Resolved that the ILPC approves the certificate for the application of appropriateness with those specified conditions. So I'll move that.
Okay, all right,
Second.
David? All in favor? Very good. The resolution carries. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Take care.
We have public comment on matters of interest.
All right, there are no members of the public here this evening to address the commission, and I received no written comments in advance of the meeting.
Okay, then on to old business. The First Presbyterian Church, 315 North Bermuda Street, with Park Historic District, certificate of appropriateness application review extension. So,
You might recall that the First Presbyterian Church, a number of months ago, presented a proposal to install a new access ramp. And the commission requested additional information on both, including some design alternatives. The applicant has been diligently working to come to the commission meetings, but due to scheduling conflicts with their contractor, they haven't been able to attend the meeting within the extended period. So they're requesting another 90-day extension due to scheduling conflicts, the ability to come to a meeting on the days that work.
okay, so. Should we read this into the record?
You can, yes, we probably should.
Okay. Do we have a
Would you
volunteer?
like to read it? Do you want the whole thing read or?
You can jump down to maybe the
That's
last
ideal.
the last two whereases,
Okay,
and then the two results.
all right. Whereas the ILPC approved a 90-day extension of the certificate of appropriateness review period on October 15th, 2024. And whereas the applicant was unable to produce the requested additional information within the 90-day review period and submitted another written request for a 90-day extension of the certificate of appropriateness review period on January 16th, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved that the ILPC agrees to another 90-day extension of the certificate of appropriateness review period. And be it further resolved that the 90-day period commences at the time of the adoption of this resolution.
Okay, we have a second. Avi, all in favor? Okay. Everybody agrees. Okay, next we have approval of minutes.
We have hard copies.
No hard copies. They were in the electronic.
The approval of minutes, start with October. Any questions concerning October minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes for October 15th.
Second.
Okay, everybody okay? All right. Everybody agree? Everybody approves the October minutes. How about the November minutes?
There are no objections. I move that we approve the November minutes.
Yes. Everybody, okay, everybody approve? Yes,
Right.
everybody accepts the November minutes. Next, we have administrative matters, tentative 2025 ILPC meeting schedule. We have-
I noticed that the February schedule was moved back 1 week to the fourth,
Yes,
to Tuesday.
yes, that is, it is a slight schedule change that I had to make due to a conflict.
I'm trying to remember, Brian, did you send me that list?
I don't think I did because I didn't produce it until about a week ago.
Oh,
So you didn't.
yeah, I'd like to look at it before.
No, that's,
It's the last page on the PDF of the electronic version you sent out.
When was February moved to again?
will be, yeah, the fourth Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
I will not be able to attend that one. I have a ton of Ulysses board meetings simultaneously, which is often not nearly as fun as these. But don't tell me it's.
What date is the February meeting?
It will be February 28th, I believe.
The 25th.
25th.
25th. I think I'm back, I'm away in February part of the month.
Okay.
I think I'm back, I'm not sure.
Okay. If that date does not work, we can figure out an alternative.
This is late this year, right? Or is it early? I can't remember now.
Okay. And next
Oh,
week,
that's good. It's the week before. Okay.
so we're holding back on approval of the meeting schedule, is that right? You want to-
I'd like to, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily require approval. I just like to distribute it at the beginning of the end, usually the end of the year. Just so that people know when the meeting dates are, and can have them in their calendar. But I do invite people to tell me about conflicts in advance, particularly ones that may impact a large number of people, so that we can adjust the schedule if necessary.
And then we have review of the 2024 staff level approvals.
There were a lot of them.
There were a lot of them. So I think there's a couple of things that happened. One, people are just doing more projects to maintain their properties. And two, the city switched to a new permitting process. It's all digital now, so you submit your building permit application online, and then all referrals to planning staff for review are handled automatically.
That's
So,
great.
yeah, so any project, any permit that's applied for in a historic district, whether it involves interior or exterior work is referred to me. I review it and either skip it as something that doesn't require review, or review it at the staff level or bump it up to a full commission.
Anything else that people want to discuss before we adjourn?
I have something that I would like to discuss, and it's not really in the purview of this commission, but I just want to note it, that if you're going up south on 96B, almost at Ithaca College, in the town of Ithaca, there was a really beautiful and significant mansion to the left that just got knocked down. You're aware of that?
Yeah, I heard about it at a meeting last week.
So that's on Rod, not on us.
Right, it is not, the town does not currently have a landmarks ordinance.
Right.
So my understanding of the situation is it was a property that was owned by Ithaca College. That was no longer being used, so the college had the property.
Is that where the violin lessons used to go?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's a wonderful building. We would not have allowed it to be knocked down.
Is there any progress with the integration with the town of Ithaca?
There has been movement. There was quite a bit of movement at the end of the year. We're just finalizing a few things and hopefully we'll have something to bring forward in the next couple of months.
If there's nothing else, then we have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
David,
Second.
Caitlin, all in favor? Okay, we have adjourned.
Right. I just looked at weather bug, it's 4 degrees up there.
Wow.